Vispurya Jandivyan Danur Vispur Jayandivyam Dvishatam Kedam Udvahan Dvishatam Kedam Udvahan Astraugham Vyadhamadbanair Astraugham Vyadhamadbanair Gananikam Ivanilaha Gananikam Ivanilaha Danur Vispur Jayandivyam Dvishatam Kedam Udvahan Astraugham Vyadhamadbanair Gananikam Ivanilaha Tanur Vispur Jayan Astraugham Vyadhamadbanair Gananikam Ivanilaha Tanur Vispur Jayandivyan Vishatam Kedam Udvahan Astraugham Vyadhamadbanair Gananikam Ivanilaha Danur Vispur Jayandivyan Dvishatam Kedam Udvahan Astraugham Vyadhamadbanair Mataji's? Ganav Vispurya Jandivyan Vishatam Kedam Udvahan Astraugham Vyadhamadbanair Gananikam Ivanilaha. Okay, word for word. Danuhu, his bow. Vispurjayan, twanging. Divyam, wonderful. Dvishatam, of the enemies. Kedam, lamentation. Udvahan, creating. Astra ogham, different types of weapons. Vyadhamat, he scattered. Banaihi, with his arrows. Ghana, of clouds. Anikam, an army. Iva, like. Anilaha, the wind. Translation: Dhruva Maharaj's bow and arrows twanged and hissed, causing the lamentation in the hearts of his enemies. He began to shoot incessant arrows, scattering all of the different weapons, just as the blasting wind scatters the assembled clouds in the sky. So we'll read through text 17, 18, and 19. So I'll just chant the verses, and then we'll go through the translations. Yes? Number 17. Tasya te chapa nirmukta bitva varmani rakshasam kayan avivishsu stigma girin asanayo yata. Translation: The sharp arrows released from the bow of Dhruva Maharaj pierced the shields and bodies of the enemy, like the thunderbolts released by the King of Heaven, which dismantled the bodies of the mountains. Text 18 and 19. Balaihi sanchidayananam shiro bischaru kundalaihi urubir hematalabair dorbir valaya valgubihi harakeyura mukutair ushnisaischa mahadhanaihi astristas tarana bhuvo rejurvira manoharaha. Translation. The great sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, the heads of those who were cut to pieces by the arrows of Dhruva Maharaj were decorated very beautifully with earrings and turbans. The legs of their bodies were as beautiful as golden palm trees. Their arms were decorated with golden bracelets and armlets, and on their heads were very valuable helmets bedecked with gold. All these ornaments lying on the battlefield were very attractive and could bewilder the mind of a hero." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It appears that in those days soldiers used to go to the battlefield highly decorated with golden ornaments and with helmets and turbans. And when they were dead, the booty was taken by the enemy party. Their falling dead in the battle with their many golden ornamental dresses was certainly a lucrative opportunity for the heroes on the battlefield. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we don't have much of purports in this section of the Bhagavatam. It's mainly descriptive. And Maitreya Muni is so perfectly describing the scene. It's more like a story and not much purport there. But these descriptions remind us a lot of Mahabharata and Ramayana and many other pastimes where the descriptions of the warriors was very opulent. Right? When it's describing, in Ramayana, when it's describing the chariot of Ravana, it says the different stones that were there in his chariot. It says it was made out of gold and ivory. It describes their weapons. Many of their weapons had many jewels, right? I remember in Mahabharata, it's described when Yudhishthira Maharaj threw a javelin at, I forgot the name of the enemy soldier, but it was one of the kings who made a huge mess in the battlefield. He threw the javelin, and it's described that the javelin was made out of ashtadhatu, the mix of the 8 metals, and it was embroidered, like it was circled with gold wire. And it had 10 types of gems on it, especially around the hilt. So that javelin must have been, worth many, many millions of rupees nowadays, or dollars, right? And he threw that javelin with such force that it pierced through the body of this king, who was obviously wearing armor and everything, and entered into the earth 10 meters. So the power in which Yudhishthira Maharaj threw that javelin must have been, unimaginable. But it's the description of all these weapons and the jewels that were on them, the armor, the helmets, everything was there. And the reason why these warriors would go into battle in such a way is because this was their offering of their duty. This is their performance of their dharma. And so it was considered a form of their worship. It's just like when we are performing our puja, we should dress nicely. We should dress in clean clothes, right? Just the other day, I was listening to a class by my Guru Maharaj, and he was talking about how there was one pujari in Jaipur. Shortly after Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur left this world, he was taking care of Govindaji. And he was a very renounced devotee. He was a very amazing acharya and very amazing devotee. But whenever he would go for puja, he would dress like a prince. He would wear clothes with beautiful embroidery on them. He would wear necklaces and turbans, and he would dress in a very opulent fashion. And so when devotees would ask him, how come you dress like this when you're going for puja? And he said that the servant is a representation of the master, and I am serving the King of Kings. And so I must dress the part. I must dress to represent my master, especially when performing puja. So even though he's a very renounced person, he would make sure that when he dressed, he would dress in a very nice and beautiful fashion to come in front of the Lord and represent him properly. So this is one way where we can see that these warriors who entered the battlefield, they were going in for performing their duty, to perform their dharma. And so they wouldn't wear cheap things that if they lost, they wouldn't lament. No, they would wear very beautiful ornaments. And their weapons obviously were worshipped, right? They would worship their weapons. They had an altar for their weapons. And these weapons were assisting them in their dharma. And so they were taking care of them very nicely. And they were decorated in very beautiful ways, right? So we can understand this. Also in more recent books, right, like the Iliad, right, by Homer, there's description of all the kings and what they were wearing, and as soon as they would die, they would lay down, and the enemy soldiers would jump and rip the chest, rip the armor off and the helmets off and take it, because that was the way that the mercenaries and the soldiers in those days would make their money, right? So in the Iliad, it's a little bit, I felt it a little bit disturbing. Like every time someone would die, it would describe that he went and took off his armor quickly before someone else could. But in the Mahabharata, it's very nicely described. And yes, it was the duty of the army that after the battle finished, they would go and collect. They would collect the different armor and helmets and like that as a source to fund the army, to take care of the army. So it's nicely described, much nicer described. And that's why if we're looking for novels, if we're looking for history and excitement and these kind of stories, there's nowhere better to look than Mahabharata and Ramayana. Right? You'll get all the descriptive and imagination you can possibly want, way better than the Iliad or any Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, any of these nowadays books. It's way better. Okay, so today I thought, since we don't have much of a purport to go on, and I'm not so, how would I say, talented to pull such meanings from such verses, I thought it would be good to describe the pastimes of Gadadhar Pandit, because Gadadhar Pandit's disappearance day is day after tomorrow, and it's also the appearance day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur on Friday, right? So they're both on the same day. So I thought, taking advantage that auspicious day is coming up, I thought we could talk a little bit about him, and also a place in Mayapur where there's a deity of Gadadhar with Mahaprabhu, and it's been there since a time when Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit were on this world. So this temple is in Champahati. Has any of you heard of Champahati? Champahati? Okay. Well, Mataji, of course. So Champahati is a place near Navadvip. It's around half an hour drive from Navadvip town, not from Mayapur. From Navadvip, you have to cross the Ganga. And it's situated in Koladvip, right, of one of the 9 islands of Navadvip. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that this place is Tanta Mount. It's one of the mountains, right, to the Kandira forest in Braj. So as we know, the Vrindavan, the Braj Mandala is, represented in Mayapur Dham and Navadvip Dham, and all the same places are represented in one place just as in the other. So this is Kandira forest in Braj, where Lord Krishna and Balaram used to show many wonderful pastimes, right? In this place, in Braj, in the same coordinating place in Braj, there was a beautiful forest of champaka flowers. And there, Champakalata, right? Champakalata Saki, she used to go and pick champaka flowers for Radharani and for Krishna for decorating them. And in Mayapur, in Navadvip Dham, this forest is also a champaka forest, well, at least used to be. Now there's still many wonderful champak trees that they planted more recently to try revive this wonderful kunj, this place. But it used to be a forest of champaka flowers. And so the local people, they opened a marketplace of flowers, and the main flower that used to be sold there was champaks. So therefore it be called Champa Hata, or the marketplace of champaka flowers. And later on became known as Champa Hati, the place where that marketplace is. So this is the place where they sell champak flowers, right? There used to be a river, Amanasi Ganga, means it was considered a Ganga that sprouted from the ground. It didn't come as a tributary, but it was there separating Koladvip and Ritudvip. But now that river is no longer there, separating those two dweeps. But when you go in Navadvip Parikram, they'll show you exactly where that river used to be, right? So there was the house of Dvija Vaninath Vipra. And we know that Dvija Vaninath was the younger brother of Gadadhar Pandit, right? So it was also the home of Gadadhar Pandit in his youth. And Dvija Vaninath Vipra, he had his house there in Champahati. And so there's pastimes that happened in that place before Mahaprabhu, and there's pastimes that happened Jai Shri Nrsimha Bhagwan Ki Jai. There's pastimes that happened after Mahaprabhu. So I thought I would first speak about before Mahaprabhu and then speak about what happened after Mahaprabhu advented. So Jayadev Goswami, when he was, after he got married, of course he got married in Puri with Padmavati. It's a very beautiful story, right? He came to Mayapur and he was staying near Balal Digi. Balal Digi is just a few kilometers north of Mayapur. And there was the kingdom of King Lakshman Sena. And still till today, there's the ruins of his kingdom is still there in Balal Digi, you can go see. And so Jayadev Goswami, he went there, he made a small kutir, and he was performing his bhajan and writing his songs there. And actually there is where he wrote the Dashavatar Stotra, where we sing every day, Tavakara Kamalavare, right? This song is from the Dashavatar Stotra. And so Jayadev Goswami, he wrote that song there in Balal Digi near Mayapur. And after he wrote that song, that song started going among the people, and the villagers started singing that song. And one day, King Lakshman Sena, he heard that song and he was so amazed. Of course, he was a devotee, and so he was, emotions of bhakti appeared in his heart, and so he wanted to meet the person who wrote this wonderful song. So he asked his ministers, and they told him that Jayadev Goswami wrote it, and he's living here just, a few minutes down the road. So Lakshman Sena immediately changed his clothes to that of a beggar or that of a poor person, a devotee, and he went to the house of Jayadev Goswami. And trying to associate with Jayadev Goswami, but Jayadev Goswami immediately figured out who he is. And so he told Lakshman Sena that I won't stay here anymore. Now that you have come, I cannot associate with material people because it will get in the way of my bhakti. And so Lakshman Sena, he said, no, please, I understand my mistake, trying to deceive you and coming into your presence and contaminating this place. You're in a very humble state of mind. He begged Jayadev Goswami that if you want to go, please go across the Ganga. There's a beautiful Champaka forest there. And please stay there. It's just on the borders of my kingdom, but like that, I will still be able to maybe come and see you when you give your permission. And so Jayadev Goswami was very pleased with the humble mood of this king. And he said, yes, I'll stay. And then you can come and you can take association when it's beneficial for us. And so he crossed the Ganga and he went and stayed in this Champaka forest. The king built a beautiful kutir, a little hut for him. He wanted to build a beautiful house, of course, a mansion, but Jayadev Goswami refused. He didn't want to disturb the ambience of that beautiful forest. And so he had a small kutir built for Jayadev Goswami. And Jayadev Goswami was staying there, and there is where he wrote the bulk of his Gita Govinda songs. Of course, we know Srila Prabhupada describes his Gita Govinda and warns us not to divulge too much and not to go deep into reading or singing the songs of Gita Govinda because they're very intimate and very deep pastimes of Radha and Krishna that we as Nitya Baddhas and materialistic people, Kanishtadikaris, we won't be able to understand and will commit offenses. Right? But the songs of Gita Govinda are praised and are worshipped all over India, all over the temples, right? The temples, they all worship his songs. They sing it for the Lord and only for his pleasure. So Jayadev Goswami was staying there, and when he was writing his songs are numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. He goes one by one. And the pastimes continue also in that kind of series. And so when he got to his song 19, he was writing his song 19, and it's describing the pastime of the Lord where Srimati Radharani is upset with the Lord. She's expressing her man, her transcendental anger to bring the Lord, to make the Lord win her favor again. Right? And so he's writing, when he got to the second last verse, when he's writing, all of a sudden he wrote, Jayadev Goswami, he describes that he wasn't writing, it was the Lord through him that was revealing the pastime in his mind. And in his mind, he saw the pastime that Krishna is begging Radharani to please place your lotus feet upon my head so I may apologize, so I may receive your favor again. And he wrote that verse down. And as soon as he wrote that verse, he came out of his trance and he was like, what did I write? How can I write this? This is against Sastra. This is not proper. I am imagining things. This isn't actually the pastime that I'm seeing. It's my own interpretation, right? So I'm performing an offense. Right? And so that verse goes, Smarala Garala Khandanam Mama Shira Srimandanam Dehi Padapalavam Udharam. Means please give Dehi Padapalavam, your lotus feet upon my head, Udharam, right? So he wrote this verse, and then he felt, I made a huge mistake. So he said, okay, I'm going to take a break. He put his pen down, and he told Padmavati that please have lunch ready. I'm going to go to the river, take a bath to purify myself, right, to cleanse myself and to refresh myself so that I can come back, have prasadam, and then continue writing. So he walked out the door, and no sooner did he go out the door that Jayadev Goswami again came inside the door of the house and told Padmavati that, I'm quickly going to write something, and then I'll have prasadam. I'll take bath later. So Padmavati quickly got lunch ready, made the plate for Jayadev Goswami. Jayadev Goswami went into his room, wrote something, came out, and then, very pleasantly had prasadam with Padmavati, talking with her, joking with her. In a very, very happy mood, Padmavati was surprised seeing her husband in such a jolly mood. He went out so upset and disturbed and came back so happy all of a sudden. And so he finished eating, and then he told Padmavati, thank you so much. I'm going to go for a walk now. So he went out the door. And no sooner did Jayadev Goswami go out the door, that again Jayadev Goswami came back in, freshly bathed, with a wet gamcha ready, And he said, Padmavati, I'm here, can I have my lunch? And Padmavati is sitting there eating her lunch because Jayadev Goswami just finished eating. And she said, what do you mean? You just ate. That's why I'm eating. I would never eat before you. And Jayadev Goswami said, I never came. I went to the river. I took bath. Now I'm back here. What are you talking about? And so Padmavati said, no, you came in. You said you're going to write something. You came, had your lunch, and then you went on a walk. So Jayadev Goswami was very bewildered, and he went into his room, and he looked in the palm leaf where he was writing his song, and that verse was again written in beautiful handwriting, effulgent handwriting was again written, that verse. And so he realized that Krishna, none other than Krishna himself, must have taken the form of Jayadev Goswami and came and written that verse again, proving that yes, this is the actual way it happened. This is true. This isn't an invention. That Krishna is asking for Radharani to put her lotus feet upon his head. And so through this pastime, it's described that we have to understand that Gita Govinda was written by Jayadev Goswami, but it was also expressed, or it is the pastimes as it happened, because the Lord made sure, he came himself and he made sure that these songs are written exactly as they happened. He didn't want anything to be changed. And so Jayadev Goswami, of course, being full of ecstasy, went and embraced Padmavati, and he said, you are so fortunate, you got to feed the Lord from your own hand, and now you're eating his remnants from his own plate. He came and he ate with you, he talked with you, and they both fell unconscious, in pure ecstasy, understanding the great mercy they just received. And then to show even more mercy, Lord Krishna appeared in the form of Gaura Sundar, the Gauranga Mahaprabhu, which till that day, of course, was long before Gauranga Mahaprabhu appeared, right? So no one in this world had seen Gauranga Mahaprabhu before this, right? And he awoken them from their unconsciousness, right? And he told them that I have showed you this special mercy because you're so dear to me, right? And soon I will appear in this world, in this place of Navadip Dham, and I will greatly enjoy these wonderful songs you're writing, right? And gave them special darshan, gave them instructions, and then disappeared. And of course, Jayadev Goswami and Padmavati Devi again fainted, seeing the beautiful form of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And when they came back to consciousness, they sat there and together savored every morsel of Mahaprasadam from Krishna, from his plate, that he came and ate himself. So this is a beautiful pastime of Jayadev Goswami that happened in that same place of Champahati. And because of that reason that Jayadev Goswami lived there, later Dvijavaninath Prabhu, he also wanted to live in that same place because it's a very holy dham, obviously. And so he made his house there. And then we're skipping ahead to the pastimes of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And when Gauranga Mahaprabhu decided that he was going to take sannyas, he didn't tell many people, obviously, because he didn't want anyone to stop him. But one of the people he told was Gadadhar Pandit. And he told him in this place of Champahati, they were both staying there with Dvijavaninath Prabhu. They were staying with him. And there, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expressed to Gadadhar Pandit that soon I'll take sannyas and I'll leave Navadvip. Right? So obviously it was a very intense emotion. Both Gadadhar Pandit and Dvijavaninath Prabhu were very affected by this news because the beauty of Mahaprabhu and that very loving and open and free relationships that the devotees had with Mahaprabhu before he took sannyas was very relishable and very beautiful, very sweet. It's like Krishna's childhood pastimes. They're very open and free and beautiful. And later when he goes to Dwarka and Mathura, they change. He's the king, right? He's not so accessible. He doesn't have that same close relationships with his devotees. And so they were greatly affected by this news that Mahaprabhu was going to take sannyas. And so when Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit decided that it's time for them to leave the house of Dvijavaninath, he begged them to please, if you leave, I will die right now, right here in this spot. I cannot tolerate the separation from the two of you. And so being extremely merciful, they stayed there for one more week. And during that week, they carved out of wood, they themselves carved deities of Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit. So those deities are there, Gaura Gadadhar deities, beautiful deities there in Champahati, and they were worshipped by Dvijavaninath. And Mahaprabhu told Dvijavaninath that as long as you worship these deities and serve these deities, you can speak even with us through these deities. Right? We will forever be here in the form of these deities, and like that, you won't be separated from us. And so it's described that Dvijavaninath would have a full relationship with these deities just as if they were there for real. He would talk with them, he would serve them, he would clean them, dress them, just as if they were there. He didn't see any difference, and by that, he continued his service to Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit. So many years passed, and Dvijavaninath was a very wonderful Brahmana, but he wasn't, let's say, having a huge family. So eventually his descendants and the disciples of his descendants dropped the worship of those beautiful deities, Gaura Gadadhar. And so when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came to this world and he was traveling, he established again the temple of Gaura Gadadhar there in Champahati. He renovated it. He appointed one of his disciples, whose name was Nayanananda, Das Brahmachari, right? He appointed him there to take care of the temple and to serve the deities for the rest of his life. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told him, if you want to do that, then you have to remain a brahmachari. And of course, Nayanananda Das Brahmachari, his brahmachari in his title, right? He was very happy to do that because he got such a wonderful opportunity. And so it's described the mood and service behavior of Nayanananda Brahmachari. He was so eager to serve anyone who came to Champahati. He would sacrifice his sleep and everything to serve the Vaishnavas. And he was super eager to hear the glories of the Lord, to hear the pastimes, and he would always be singing the pastimes and the bhajans. And he would sing Gita Govinda, because Jayadev Goswami wrote Gita Govinda there for Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and Gauranga Mahaprabhu appeared in his deity form, so he was always singing Gita Govinda for Gauranga Mahaprabhu in that very same place. And there's many wonderful pastimes that happened there, but I thought I would also describe a pastime that happened with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and our Srila Prabhupada that happened actually in that same place. And this was taken from the memoirs or the writing of Nayanananda Das Brahmachari, who was a godbrother, a senior godbrother of Srila Prabhupada. And he describes the pastime. He says that in the last year of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life, right, he was doing one final Navadip Manda Parikram where they were carrying him in a palanquin, right? And when they got to Champahati, there was many thousands of pilgrims came, and they said that the entire area, the entire town was filled with tents and people staying to see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur maybe for the last time. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was giving a lecture there. And just at that same day, one of his disciples, Bhakti Saranga Goswami, came back from London, having tried to establish the preaching in the Western countries, but he wasn't very successful. They opened a small mutt, but they weren't able to make many devotees. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had this in his mind, and he was talking in the lecture about how important it was that we spread Krishna consciousness in the Western world, and how it was the desire of Nityananda Prabhu, and how it was the desire of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and how important it is. And so he was looking, he stopped talking in a very serious mood. He was staring at all the brahmacharis and sannyasis that were on one side. But then he turned and he was looking right past Nayanananda Das Brahmachari. And Nayanananda Das Brahmachari was looking like, who is he staring at with such potency? And so he turned and he saw that Abhay Charanaravinda, Srila Prabhupada, was sitting there. And they were just staring at each other for a couple of minutes, like everybody was wondering what's happening. And then Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur turned and said, but in the future, there will be a disciple who will perform all of these. I won't be alive to see it, he said. Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur said, I won't be in this world to see it, but he will do everything, he said. And so Nayanananda Das Brahmachari noted this pastime, and he was describing to his disciple, Nityananda Brahmachari, who's there now serving the deities. And he said that eventually Prabhupada did everything. And Prabhupada was the person who spread Krishna consciousness in the Western world and performed all the desires of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, just as he described in this wonderful lecture he was giving before he passed away. So I didn't know this pastime happened, but it's here in the description by Nayanananda Das Brahmachari. And if you go there to this day, Nityananda Brahmachari is there. He's one of those devotees who's probably in his late 50s, but he looks like he's 25. He's the most enthusiastic devotee. He's eager to serve. Every year, thousands of devotees go there for Navadimanda Parikram. That's only from ISKCON side. Many other Gaudiya Math Vaishnavas, they also go on their Parikram there. And he's just running back and forth, serving, singing, talking, describing. When he tells the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, his English isn't very good, but you understand everything. And he says it with such enthusiasm and feeling that you really feel his devotion in his descriptions, and you understand everything somehow. He's jumping from one sentence to another, another. You kind of string it all together, but you understand everything. And he sings very beautifully. He's still singing Gita Govinda for Gaura Gadadhar. He sings every day. And it's a very beautiful, beautiful place. So if you ever get the chance and you go to Mayapur, make sure it's in your transcendental bucket list of places. It's very easy to get there. From Navadip Ghat, you can tell the rickshaw directly to take you there. And you'll have the beautiful darshan of Gaura Gadadhar deities that were made by the hands of Gadadhar Pandit and Mahaprabhu themselves. And what's even more interesting is that when you see the deities of Gaura Gadadhar there, and you see Dameshwar Mahaprabhu, of course we know Dameshwar Mahaprabhu was carved for Vishnupriya. Lakshmi Priya? Lakshmi Priya, right? Was carved for her, right? The deities look very similar. Their eyes are the same, their body's the same, their feature, their shoulders, everything's the same. You look at them side by side and it's like almost they were carved by the same person, and they were. So it's very beautiful, and it's amazing to see that. There's not many deities that were carved like that. There's the other deities in Ambika Kalna that were carved for Gauridas Pandit? I think it was carved, that famous pastime. And those deities also look very similar. So you should always go and take darshan of these beautiful deities carved by Mahaprabhu himself. And you can see Dharmeshwar Mahaprabhu in Navadvip, and then go to Champahati and see Gaura Gadadhar deities. Very special. So Shri Gadadhar Pandit Ki Jai. Okay, are there any questions or comments? Jai. Yes, Prabhu. Okay, I can try. Yes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day is on Friday, but I didn't want to take anything away from Madhai Jivan Prabhu's. He's giving class on Friday, but I'll try say just a few stories. I was recently actually doing some research on Bhaktivinoda Thakur for a little. I was doing like teaching a young child about our Guru Parampara. And so I put a little bit together about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life and how great he was. And so in there you can find, in some of his diaries, you can find his schedule, right? His schedule of his daily schedule. And I don't have it here with me because I didn't expect I would say, but every single minute of his day is accounted for. Like it says 9:15 to 9:19, eat breakfast. 9:19 to 9:21, wash your hands, wash your plate, and go sit over there. Like every single minute of his day is accounted for. There's not 1 minute wasted, right? I'm pretty sure seconds would be there, but at that time maybe he didn't have like a watch or something and it wasn't that important. But every single minute of his day was accounted for. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was such an amazing devotee, but even on his personal side, or let's say his character, he was an amazing manager and administrator, and that's why he was so needed by the British government at that time. He was the district magistrate of whole Orissa, especially Jagannath Puri. And right now, district magistrate, even to today, that position is, there's no course, like, it's like a mini president, you could say. Like, it's super powerful, the amount of power they have. They're on top of the police, they're on top of all court cases, they're on top of everything. And back then, it was like a governor. It was very high position in the government. And so he was such a perfect manager that he could do what other district magistrates could do in a week, he would do in a day. He was able to do in the day. He would do the work of 10 men, he himself. Right? He would get to the court and he would resolve difficult court cases that have been going on for months. When they would come in front of him, he would resolve it in minutes, and he would make both parties happy and content with his decision. I mean, in Kali Yuga, this is almost unheard of. Everybody wants, for themselves and would never be resolved. You hear now a court case is going on for years, but he would resolve it in seconds, And so when Bhaktivinoda Thakur realized that it was time for him to focus on his Krishna consciousness, I mean, of course, even in Puri, he would spend in his calendar or in his schedule, there's only a couple of hours he would be in court, a couple of hours in the office, and the rest of the day he would be writing and singing bhajans, doing his study, doing his japa. Of course, he was chanting way more than 64 rounds a day. But he felt that now he needs to focus on the preaching. And so he needed to find the place of birth of Mahaprabhu and start developing Navadvip Dham. And so when he told the British government that he wanted to retire and he wanted to come to Mayapur, they begged him to please, okay, we will post you in Navadvip Dham and we'll post you in West Bengal, and you can be the district magistrate of that area, but don't, we need you to run part of our empire. And he said, okay, but I'm going to be living in Navadvip, the closest city is Krishnanagar, and by rickshaw, obviously that time would have been the only form of transport, that's, at least a 45-minute, an hour drive, or even more. Back then, the roads weren't as they are today. No, by rickshaw would have been much more, like 3 hours. In auto rickshaw and motor rickshaw, it takes 45 minutes now. And there was no roads back then. It was total jungle. And the British government said, to have you as our district magistrate, we're willing to do whatever. And so they made, from Krishnanagar, they made a train track coming from the courthouse right in front of the house of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Like, you come out of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house here, and where these cushions are, that's the rail track. It's like that. And back then, it's unheard of to make a train for one person. And this train track, or it's more like a tram, is called Bhaktivinoda Express. And it existed just until 2006 or 7. It was still there. And it was so practical. You could just cross Jalangi, and you would in Krishnanagar in 20 minutes. Now it's, they tried, renovated, and put a bigger train, but then there was some politics. Some people didn't want to get rid of, sell their land. And so everything is ready, but there's no train running. It was really sad when that happened. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had that tram. He would come out of his house, get into the tram, and straight into the court, all the way in Krishnanagar. It's almost the equivalent, like if someone had a position here in Simhachalam and the government made a train coming to Simhachalam to take him from here to Passau every day, only for him. Even today, it's unimaginable. What to speak of back then when there was, difficult to construct things and it was a total jungle. They had to probably cut down a full forest to make the tram. They made it for Bhaktivinoda Thakur because that's the kind of manager he was, and that's the powerful person he was. What to speak of a Vaishnava? That's just his material qualifications, right? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a person that is well underappreciated and unknown. Even Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, Gaura Das Babaji, Jagannath Das Babaji, all these personalities, we need to learn so much more to see the great heritage we have, the great responsibility we have, and the opportunity we have to go back to God in this lifetime because of their mercy and their hard work, right? Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was also fighting a great portion of his life against the Adivasis, the Sahajyas, the Apasampradayas, those people who were claiming to be Gaudiya Vaishnavas and followers of Mahaprabhu, but practicing abominable and all these nonsense practices, saying that they're following Gopi Bhav and all these things. At the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there was the proper Vaishnavas were so disgusted with what was happening in the name of Gaudiya Vaishnavism that they would hide. They would go into bhajan, they would go in a forest like Gorkishore Das Babaji and not want to deal or talk with anyone. They would just focus on their own bhajan. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, very forcibly and very powerfully fought against these people and reestablished the good name and practices of proper Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur obviously took that one step further and established so many temples and preached Krishna consciousness and preached Gaudiya Vaishnavism in a big way and established our parati, our sadhana, because before this, it was mainly Babaji. The devotee would follow a very Raganuga Bhakti form of devotional service, very spontaneous. They were so Krishna conscious that they didn't need Mangalarti, they didn't need Darshanarti, they didn't need Bhagavatam class, because 24 hours a day they were thinking of Krishna. They didn't need to start because they never stopped. This is something of Raganuga Bhakti, that they didn't need to start chanting my rounds now after Mangalarti because they never stopped chanting. They didn't need to start singing now for the Lord because they never stopped singing for the Lord. But before Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there wasn't a formal form like wake up at this time, chant this many rounds, attend Mangalarti, Darshanarti, Bhagavatam class. Formal worship and also the deity type worship of the Lord wasn't there. So that was established by his son, right? By Bhaktivinoda Thakur's son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And so on days of their appearance, we have to take initiative and read about them, learn about them, hear about them, and take it upon ourselves to understand and to appreciate these great Vaishnavas who came before us. So day after tomorrow is another day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day. There's so much information on him. There's autobiographies by he himself, and there's biographies written by so many other great devotees. So please take advantage and read about him. Jai. Did that bring up any questions or comments? No? Okay. So we'll finish here. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Sri Gadadhar Pandit ki, Gaur Gadadhar ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.